help women, save lives, and peacefully end abortion where you live.
I can tell you exactly what would happen. The infant would be delivered. The infant would be kept comfortable. The infant would be resuscitated if that's what the mother and the family desired.
You were serious about that?
Be inspired to change hearts and minds by joining over 1 million volunteers taking part in the global movement happening in your neighborhood.
She says, pray that I can get through this abortion. And I said, oh, no. So she went ahead and went into the abortion clinic. And she just came out. She told us, I'm not going to get the abortion. We just had a baby saved. We had a baby saved in Memphis today. Praise the Lord.
This is the 40 Days for Life podcast with your host, Sean Carney.
Hello, and thank you for joining us today on the 40 Days for Life podcast. I'm Sean Carney, the president of 40 Days for Life, and your host for this podcast, which is dedicated to helping you end abortion where you live. And today we have a very boring, non-controversial topic where we will discuss immigration and abortion for all of you to use with your relatives who you like and don't like at Thanksgiving. So we will do our best to show the connection of immigration and abortion. There is a connection, and we have a very close relationship to that because we have 40 Days for Life along the southern border. So we will discuss immigration, what it means for the abortion industry, and we recognize that this is a touchy topic for many people. So if you are happy we are covering this or angry at something we say, please email us at podcast@40daysforlife.com because we will be speaking about immigration. Those who come legally and illegally, we will be discussing. Somebody who is, in fact, in the United States illegally is Mr. Steve Carlin, joining us from Madison, Wisconsin. Gotcha.
Nobody's supposed to know about that, Sean.
Yeah, you came across the southern border with all of the criminals and all of the bad people and all of the drugs.
When Trump said they're not sending their best, he was referring to me.
So we also want to welcome Ramona Trevino, who is here legally.
I'm here legally, by the way.
That's right. We want to get everything clear. Illegal, legal. I think one of the funny things, because obviously immigration, like Trump ran on that in 2016, and he came down the escalator, and it was like right off they're sending their murderers, they're sending their rapists. That was kind of the two like foundation of the list. The list now, like in 2024, like when he just goes on and on and on, right? Like they're sending us the sex traffickers, the fentanyl, like the list has gotten to be like 17 different items of like they're sending fill in the blank, which it's true actually, I believe, but it's funny because he's just gotten away from his core of like really bad people. And then I think that led to the cat eating thing where in fact they're eating the dogs and they're eating the cats and they're eating the pet snakes and all the pets. So
The pets. Yeah.
He got right. He immediately was a racist. So then he had to say that Trump Tower had the best tacos. Remember all that?
On Cinco de Mayo, I think.
On Cinco de Mayo. So he immediately got like, yeah, and I don't know if the wall was like a racist thing then. Immigration, I know it was like if you want to close the border, you're a racist. If you don't, then you're irresponsible or blah, blah, blah. But, he basically made that this like huge issue in 2016. And the difference now, and for our viewers and our listeners and everything, is that immigration used to be, for us Texans, that's a big issue here. But nobody else really cares. It's like Texas, California, Arizona, New Mexico. New Mexico and California don't really have a problem with it, and it's kind of an Arizona, Texas thing. And now you see polling, which we'll get into, people in Michigan like care about the border, and they're Democrats.
Yeah, it certainly has taken over as a key issue, and I always think that the discussion of immigration is disingenuous because I think we wrap it into one issue, and there's multiple issues here. There's like, what about the good people who are looking to come here to make a better life? What about the people who have come and their status is not legal? What about national security of terrorists coming over the border? What about the economic impacts? What about the drugs coming over? There's like so many different issues, and we just wrap it up simplistically into immigration as though like the drug traffickers and the families are the same issue, and I don't think they are.
Yeah, it's definitely multifaceted. It's not a size fits all when it comes to immigration. I think that's why it's, you get a knee-jerk reaction from people when you touch on it. And so I try to avoid the topic if I can. But I think...
You're just doing a podcast on it every now and then.
Right?
We're sending this to
all
your friends and family and parishioners.
Because, I mean, it's being from Texas, like you run into it. And I've dealt with this my whole life, being in Texas and meeting really good people who are waiting for, their, legal process to go through, and they've been waiting for decades, and it's like these people are wonderful, and then you have other people that you don't know necessarily what their status is and what kind of person they are. So it's we deal with a lot.
We do.
Yeah.
When you were a kid growing up in Texas, was this talked about in your house?
Never.
Okay, that's funny because it's talked about by everybody now. But I remember the wall being discussed. I don't know if it was the Bush, Clinton, Perot election, but there was somewhere it came up like where a wall was proposed or they thought about a wall. And I remember as a kid being told by my parents and relatives, like, if America is built on immigrants, we're all Irish and we have a slice of Polish, had a great grandfather from Poland. America is built on immigrants, you have to come legally. And I was like, yeah, well, why is that a thing? And it seems like we just kind of went through this time where I guess we thought the border was a bad thing and every politician promised to fix it. No one did. And then Trump came in and basically his rhetoric made it a main issue. I've never understood why it's really that controversial. Because one of the things that Trump said when I was like, what's his point in all this? Is he says, if you don't have a border, you don't have a country. And that's true. Just like we say, if you don't have children, you don't have a country. We don't have a future. And I never understood, I think the race thing got hijacked like everything else. It's that any country has to have a system where you allow people to come in legally. And you can't come in illegally. And I never understood allowing people to come in illegally and that be like a virtuous thing. And that's what's happened. And now it's not the people's fault who are coming, or even the criminals. If you're a criminal or you're a terrorist, come to the southern border. We're not going to stop you. And if you just want a better life, come to the southern border. We're not going to stop you. And that the system has created this problem, and nobody wants to fix it except, Trump, and he started building the wall and all of that. And they're saying, Israel has a wall and a lot of countries have walls.
If you fix it, you're a racist.
If you fix it, you're a racist. And it's like, but every state has the right to protect itself. And I don't understand why it's this controversial thing to the level that it is.
I think it becomes difficult where you see people who have come here seeking a better life. Like, I have a lot of respect for people. You live in communist cesspool Venezuela, and you're going to risk everything, get on a boat or walk 1,000 miles to come and provide your children with a better life. I have a lot of respect for that. And then they're here, and then we talk about, okay, what do we do? And there's talk about mass deportation. I think that's where people get their feathers pretty ruffled, is the idea of these families that risked it all to come here, and then we're going to send them back. I think that becomes that's a very real scenario, and then we apply it to everybody, or even having a legal immigration process and a closed border in the first place.
Yeah, because I think you have deportation on one end, and you have catch and release on the other, which is a total waste. Our poor, troopers on the border patrol, where it's just like, this is a total waste, and you're endangering them. And I think you have these two extremes. But the whole idea that we should have a closed border has absolutely been hijacked by, well, you're a racist. And it's like, everybody has a closed border. Nobody has an open border.
Well, we saw the bizarre rhetoric out of the Vatican where if putting unrestricted abortion, taxpayer funded all 40 weeks on the same level as having a legal immigration system, and it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, especially with the Vatican being like the most secure state in the world in terms of who gets to come.
It has a big wall, and Tom Cruise jumped it in Mission Impossible 3. But the Vatican says a lot of stuff that nobody understands and has since 2013. So, I mean, that's like neither here nor there. It's not like it's church teaching,
Right.
It's just like the thought of the day.
But that's the thing that sends a message, though, right? Is like, well, you're not pro-life if you kill babies, and you're not pro-life if you suggest that people go through the legal process to come into a country. That's the sort of seamless garment thing, and I think it justifies a lot of consciences and saying, yeah, I can vote for the candidate that wants to slaughter 1 million or 1.5 million babies every year because the alternative is not in the same moral plane as the killing of children.
But I think, sticking on the immigration part, we'll obviously get to abortion. I think that this isn't difficult. This is kind of common sense that we have to have a system and we just can't have an open border with all these people coming across. I think that's more popular today, bipartisan, than it ever has been. And that's just polling, like conservative polling, obviously, but liberal polling, where you have people that I didn't think anybody in Seattle really cared about, illegal immigrants coming across the border. But that's now a thing.
It's affecting more people than ever. I can remember years ago, my wife speaks Spanish, and so we were relatively newly married, and she had a job. And
she's the one that smuggled Steve illegally,
across the border.
She was the mule.
She was the mule. This is the coyote.
Oh, coyote?
Coyote.
What's a mule?
A mule is the drug traffickers.
Oh, okay. Well,
Steve, you brought your drug traffickers. You brought your Packer fans. They're all bad.
So she was the coyote. She worked in an office because she spoke Spanish. So it was like a company that had a lot of Spanish-speaking employees, and she kind of did like a lot of the bilingual stuff. And she was really seeing firsthand how the Spanish-speaking people who were undocumented, this is not good for them either. They were being exploited, and she ended up leaving the job because her employer asked her to falsify Social Security numbers. And she said, I don't think I'm going to do that. But they were able to pay less, offer fewer benefits, exploit their workers. What are you going to do? We know your status.
Mm-hmm. Well, the exploitation goes both ways, too. And I've told you my kids' high school is like 65% Latino. And we have a lot of friends that are from Colombia and Mexico and Venezuela. And you can't even get them on immigration because they came here legally and they either whatever, went to work, built companies, whatever, and they're like, people can just walk across. Like it's absolutely ridiculous. We put our whole livelihood and our whole life plan into coming to America and being here legally and having our kids and raising them. And they obviously understand the why because they did it. They know why people want to come here, but it's so unfair. It's so unfair. It's very similar to like the college student loans,
right.
So you have like a taxpayer blue collar worker who mows lawns all day, and he's got to pay for some like PhD kid, degree and forgive the college loans. It seems unfair because it is unfair, and I just have never thought that it's complicated or a big moral issue. I think you have closed borders and you have a system which America has depended on since our founding of people coming here. And the idea that America is closed to the world is total nonsense.
I have a friend who married a Canadian woman, and the immigration attorney made an error, like a clerical error on the paperwork, and they had to live in separate countries for 2 years while that got figured out. And so like, what?
It's crazy.
Ever, take a boat
Just
down
go to Mexico.
While they were married?
Well, they were married. Yeah, 2 years.
Wow,
The first 2 years of
that's
marriage,
incredible.
they lived in different countries.
We had friends from Holland, and he was from Turkey. She was from Holland, and they were our neighbors, and we got to know them, and we were friends with them. We hung out with them all the time, and they had to leave. And like he was in like high IT security.
Wow.
Yeah. And I told, I was like, that sounds shady. But he was, he's like, he made all the jokes. It was very funny. And she was a HR executive. And they had to leave. And it's so stupid.
This is, I think, where the rhetoric gets out of control is you'll hear like, well, Trump supporters are anti-immigrant. I believe there are probably some people in America who are anti-immigrant, just as there are some people who are racist. But it's really disingenuous to say that someone who believes there should be an orderly process for immigration is, quote, anti-immigrant.
I don't even agree with that. I think we have people in this country that are racist, but it's not the entire country, which is
Right.
what we're told, and now the term has no meaning. But so there's those people. I don't think anybody's actually anti-immigrant.
Oh, interesting.
Because even if you take the people that are like, I just wanted to be a bunch of white folks. That's my racist voice. They want immigration for the workforce.
Okay.
So I don't know if anybody's actually, anti-immigrant at this point. Plus, we're just all, how many, I know you can go up to New England or whatever, upstate New York, and see all those houses that look like they're out of the Great Gatsby, and like those people came over, in 1682 or whatever. But most of us came from other countries in the last 150 years. Okay. The Italians came over. My great-grandparents came over from Ireland. Like, that's just, we all come from. So I don't know if the anti-immigrant person, I don't think that's a lot of people.
So would you say it's more anti-illegal immigration?
Totally.
That's more,
of course,
the sentiment, right? Like,
but it's not, that's just so basic.
right.
Like, that's just like, it's just the difference between like taking an Advil and shooting up heroin. Like, you're like, well, you're for drugs.
Caffeine's
Caffeine's a drug, bro. Remember the guy next
So
to me on the plane?
if I state I'm anti-illegal immigration, then you can imagine the looks that I get, right?
You're
well, I'm an
obviously a
American.
racist.
I
No.
know. Yeah.
No, because you're Latino and
And
you're
I
a
can get
Texan.
away with it?
No, and you're a Texan. And that's what they don't want to hear from you.
Exactly,
They don't want to hear
exactly.
from you at all.
Yeah.
The people who are pro illegal immigration are white liberals. Okay.
I know.
So
It's like if I say I am anti-illegal immigration, then suddenly I'm a traitor to my race.
yes.
Like, come on. I'm here three generations. Of course, I'm kind of in the same group with everyone else whose ancestors came here, right? And for some even longer than yours, right? I
Totally.
think that we
Oh, yeah,
determined
longer.
that
We did.
My family.
You've been in Texas longer than I have.
Exactly. So, but to say, well, I'm anti-illegal immigration, then suddenly the world's exploding. People are like, wait a second, you're a racist. You're a traitor to your race. Really? I don't see how that's. And I've gotten that before.
There's nothing better than white people who tell people who aren't white that they're racist.
Exactly.
And pro-abortion men who tell women who are pro-life that they're misogynists.
They're misogynists.
Exactly.
Okay, so we kind of covered that. But obviously, let's get into some of the how this plays in, because I tell you who likes illegal immigrants: Planned Parenthood. There we go. Okay. Migrant women seeking abortions means new challenges for pro-lifers. Number one, and we've had Myra Rodriguez. She's spoken. She came illegally, and Planned Parenthood hired her.
Yep.
And then they promoted her to be manager. This is in Arizona. Okay, and we had 40 Days for Life outside her place, and then she had a conversion, and she's wonderful. We don't want her deported.
Well, she's a U.S. citizen now.
I know, but the listener doesn't know that. I was making a funny joke.
Oh, darn it.
Yeah, we're going to deport everybody else except the pro-lifers. And so, but this is like the thing I'm afraid of saying as a white male. And there's not many things, right? But this is like, I don't know if I can say that, but Myra's big on it, which is they set up abortion facilities on the border to abort the Mexicans. Like, she's just like out with it. And that sounds like something the white guy would make up, the crazy pro-life white guy. But then when you hear her speak, you've talked about this. This is like a real thing, and it makes perfect sense.
Absolutely.
You're here. You have no money. You just found out you're pregnant. We speak Spanish. We know what it's like. Get an abortion. The government pays for it.
Absolutely. And not only are they setting it up, but they are also helping transport women. So if a woman is here and she is detained and she's pregnant, they are going to say, okay, well, if you're in Texas and it's illegal in Texas, we're going to transport you to a state where it is legal so that you can have an abortion. And it goes back to the sentiment of this party that says, you're welcome, our borders are open, come on over, but your children are not welcome here. Your future isn't welcome. Just you. We don't want your babies.
That's straight back to RB Ruth Bader Ginsburg, right? Abortion, Roe v. Wade was decided to make sure that we didn't have too many of the populations we didn't want too many of.
Yeah.
And Sanger too. You know?
Oh, yeah, totally. But let's talk about, what about the actual people, though, coming over? So let's say the woman's scared or whatever, and we helped. I've told the story. I told it when we were in Mexico of Milagros, who the coyote brought her over illegally. And they went to California. She was told that her baby had severe disabilities and her husband was abusive. There was a lot there. She didn't believe in abortion. She didn't want abortion. 2 doctors referred her for abortion. She finally went into this massive Planned Parenthood in Southern California, late-term abortion facility, chose life at the last moment. She was told, obviously, the baby had severe disabilities, and she had Milagros, who was born with no legs. It's one of the most beautiful stories.
Which means miracle, by the way.
I translated that for all the Mexicans when we were in Mexico. They were really appreciative. They were impressed with my Spanish when I said, because y'all may not speak English, y'all may not speak Spanish. Milagros means miracle. They actually got that joke. They didn't get a lot of my jokes with the translator. They had the earpiece, but they were like, that's when they gave up and pulled out their phone and were checking soccer scores. Like, is he going to wrap this up? He's now making stupid translation jokes. But that's a beautiful story. And of course, her marriage got better and their life got better. But as an American, like, our culture is rotten. So opportunity-wise, the greatest country in the world. And it's, even Robert pointed this out, and he laughs at it, but I still think he respects it. When you land in Houston from an international flight, people clap. And he's like, "We never do that in London, never do that in London." And I was like, that's because your country sucks. Ours is awesome. So, but like, there's that pride of like, man, we love, what's the term for people that love Europe?
Europhiles?
Europhiles. Which you said I was one. So it's like, because I like Europe. We go, it's cool. Wow, espresso's only $1. Ain't that something? We eat the spaghetti. It's great. And like 4 days in, you're like, holy moly, America's way better. And Texas is way better. You know, and that is very unique. And that's why everybody wants to come here. But our culture's rotten. And you come across, legally or illegally, and we're like, yep, we got Coca-Cola, we got Levi blue jeans, we've got John Wayne, we've got all this cool stuff.
We've got Nikes.
Get on contraception and start having abortions. And they don't believe these are Catholic countries.
Right.
And you can see the demographics of the Latinos that come over, and they have a lot of kids. And then the next generation, they don't have so many. And the next and they're basically drinking the white liberal Kool-Aid.
And it's more evident, too, in church. Like now, especially in Texas, we've increased the Spanish Mass, right? There's more Spanish Masses than ever.
I grew up at that.
And I'm in the English Mass. And if I ever have to like switch and go to the Spanish Mass because we were running late, I'm like, holy cow, there's so many kids. You know, you don't hear hardly anything in the English Mass. And then
the Spanish Mass is
like,
always later.
You know, like, oh, it's just children everywhere.
Spanish Mass is always at 1 o'clock. Because they eat lunch at 3 and they eat dinner at 9:30.
Yeah, we got up at 11. So, you know, we're barely getting to Mass at 1. we were partying Saturday night.
We're at the conferences in Latin America. We're just like, I found myself saying last year, this year was a little better. Last year I was like, we're only an hour and 40 minutes off schedule, you know, and that's like a victory.
An accomplishment, yeah.
Eating dinner at 9 o'clock at night, where we had the wonderful Spanish priest. I think he's actually up there still talking. And
Probably
doing the opening prayer.
Yes, absolutely.
His talk was great. It is an opening prayer that lasted 4 days. But yeah, the whole like, come here and work. Come here, we'll give you free stuff. Come here and get an abortion. Don't maybe bring your Catholic faith.
Right. You know, it's funny, Sean, you mentioned about as generations go and the number of children were reduced. Even just looking at my own family, I remember, so I think about my great-grandparents had 6 kids. Then my mother was one of 4, and I'm one of 2. So in just that span of 3 generations, the number of children these families were having within my own family just continued to reduce.
Right.
Just like you said, you drink the Kool-Aid. And then part of that, of course, my mom was like, I was on contraception. I didn't know of any other way. Like, that's what's sold to you. It's a bill of goods, and you think this is good. And so it's really sad when you think about people who come here from very pro-life countries, very faithful Catholic countries, and in order for them to assimilate to the United States, part of that quote-unquote assimilation that they think this involves getting on contraception, not having very many children, because then they feel out of place,
Yeah.
kind of like how when people see you out in public with all of your children,
Yeah.
you're an anomaly, like, whoa.
Yeah.
Are you Hispanic or something? Because you've got all of these kids.
Well, and we go to the same little Mexican restaurant at least once a week. And it's either or, because everybody is Mexican who works in there, which is why we go there. And English is their second language if they speak English. So, of course, depending on who we get, like the servers, they love it. Like, Ocho, like on the 8 kids, and they're like, it's awesome. Or, and this saddens me, they're like, wow, you have a lot of kids.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you're Mexican.
Yeah.
You're supposed to have more than us. Like,
Yep.
what are you doing? And this is to me, the Mexicans and the Irish did this. Ireland got money and then left the faith, right? But traditionally kind of considered the third world country of Ireland. And like Mexico, very Catholic, preserved their faith, fought off, for us it was the Brits, and for Mexico it was the Spaniards, got your independence, kept it, had a bunch of kids, treats everybody like you're related to them, and the cultures are very similar. And I didn't know that till I started going down there to Colombia and Mexico City for 40 days. Everybody's like hugging you and kissing you, and I'm like, this is like in Ireland. Like they act like you're related. Oh, sit down and have a pint there. No, I'm like, I don't even know you. And that is being rotted out through leaving the faith, getting on contraception, being pro-abortion, now attacking marriage. Ireland is way far ahead on that stuff than Mexico. But that is toxic, and it's a loss of identity. And Myra speaks to this because I think her mom's name is Guadalupe.
I'm not sure, but
I think her mom's name is either Guadalupe or
You're correct.
I am. Okay. And so she's like, part of her conversion is she looks up, she's like, my mom's literally named after Our Lady Guadalupe. Like, what am I doing? And kind of obviously got back to her roots. But that's a problem. And for all these people that run around and say, let everybody in, opportunity-wise, it's great. But this is a whole different world that, of course, politicians don't care. But it's not necessarily the best situation for their souls because they are going to be put to work and told not to have kids.
yeah, and it's really sad too when you hear these stories, harrowing stories from these women who have traveled here, how they arrived. Speaking of like the traumas, a lot of the people who work in PRCs, like I had the opportunity to meet a nurse in Florida who works at a PRC, and she's Peruvian, so she's native Peruvian, and she was telling me about some of these stories of these women who are immigrating here, and she's like, Ramona, people have no idea. People have no idea what these women have gone through, the ways in which they arrived, the traumas they experienced on the way here. Then they get here, they're pregnant by their boyfriend. The boyfriend leaves them and they know no one. And oftentimes they don't even speak Spanish. Oftentimes they speak, this indigenous dialect from where they're from. And she said, I can't even help them, and she said, it's just really this new level of crisis that we're not really used to and accustomed to when dealing with women in crisis pregnancies. Because, as pro-lifers, we, have all of these experiences with women, and we've kind of heard it all and seen it all. But this kind of new wave of immigration and the things that these women are going through, it's another level that we're not used to.
And as Trump's list, of all the bad people coming over, well, the list, particularly the sex trafficking, there's sex trafficking victims trying to flee and get across the border, and the system has been so corrupt for so long, it has to be fixed. It's good for no one. And I'm sure like Jim Bob conservative guy would say, no, the Democrats want all these people here so that they can vote for them. I've heard that argument. You would know more about that. I don't know if that's actually legit. Like, if are illegal immigrants electing Democrats?
I don't know. I don't know how you tell.
I don't either. I think that sounds, there's obviously some motivation. I mean, and even you've had liberal reporters say, why is Biden letting this happen? Like, it's a stroke of a pen. He can doesn't even have to close the border. He can just, actually use our laws and enforce our laws. And it's just not happening. So I don't know what the motivation is for that. And some people are like, they want to destroy America, but it's got to be more substantive than that. But we do know, aside from that, it's good for no one.
And I would argue from the pro-life and Christian perspective, this is why we want the border fixed.
Right.
Because it is creating more of a trauma situation and more of a crisis situation for these women. And I'm not saying that they're coming here and they're experiencing something far worse than what they were fleeing from.
Yeah.
But we don't know that. It could be that someone is fleeing just for the sake that because the border's open and I'm looking for a better life. And then they come here and it's much worse. Like, they're experiencing things that are much worse than maybe what they would have experienced.
They're getting funneled into an abortion facility.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So imagine now what happens, what the fallout is from that. If we know based on our experience that, post-abortive women suffer tremendous trauma. And so can you imagine putting that on top of already in struggles, coming here, you're already struggling financially, you're struggling with the language, you're struggling to find jobs, you're struggling with people exploiting you, and then tack on top of that, now you've had an abortion.
I think some of this is the answer to Sean's question, like, why are they doing it? Well, there's a lot of grift involved in it. You create sort of this crisis. What do you need to solve it? You need more government. And we see more government, and we see grant money flowing, and we see Planned Parenthood getting grant money. I mean, I walked away from the Green Bay Packers for a few years because they were giving money specifically to Planned Parenthood, specifically to address the Latino population. So I quit watching for 3 years until they turned their back on Planned Parenthood.
Which is great that they actually stopped.
Yeah, and they gave money to pregnancy help centers.
Right. No.
Jim Ball, our leader in Green Bay, was like the driving force of that.
Who was an NFL referee?
Yeah.
In his
Was
spare
he
time.
really? I didn't know that.
I knew he was a referee. I didn't know he was an NFL referee.
He has done
cool.
preseason games.
Okay, that's awesome.
He's told me those stories. Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
But you see this sort of thing, and we see even in the church, there are groups that are making big money on dealing with this stuff. And so I know it sounds kind of conspiracy minded to be like, oh, the money's flowing, but the money is flowing on this.
Yes.
But politically, we weren't going to talk about this, but so the guy that says, well, Biden or Kamala, they don't want to do anything with the border. At least Trump wants to do something with the border. They don't want that because all these people are going to come in and vote for them. But that's not happening. Trump, who took the hardest line on immigration, had to make taco jokes on Cinco de Mayo, and all the absurdities that have come with him. And I don't know if you remember. I think it was the first debate of the primary of 2016. Okay, so this is like when he's about to just explode on the scene, and first question goes to him, and they say something like, "This wasn't the you've called women pigs and fat, only Rosie O'Donnell." This wasn't that. This was you came down and you immediately splattered your racism and they're illegals and they're this and they're that and they're rapists. And he said, none of these people have done anything about it. The only reason we're talking about immigration is because of me, and I made it an issue, and that is a fact, whether you like it or not. And of course, that was back when we could have crowds at debates. So and that's 100% true that he made this like a relevant issue. But he's getting the Latinos. Mm-hmm. Bush didn't get anywhere near the Latino vote.
And he could speak Spanish.
Trump?
No, Bush.
Bush. Oh, yeah.
I was like, whoa.
I'm just saying, you'd think if somebody was going to
get the Latino
But
vote.
and he was the governor of Texas.
Yeah.
Okay? Mexico loves Texas. So, and Texans. But Trump, it's not like he got 1 or 2%. I mean, he's getting like 12, 13, 14% more Latino voters than previous presidents who really didn't address the border with any kind of, and that speaks to your point, which is for the Latinos that are here, They don't want this.
Right.
They don't want an open border. And I mean, when you look at, and I know it's different in Miami because of the Cubans, and they're basically like, we're not going back to communists. We love Trump. You know,
my attitude is, you know how long it's taken me to be accepted as an American? Why?
Centuries.
It's taken me a lot of work to be accepted.
Ramona's next book, Overcoming George W. Bush. But that is the shocking stat that doesn't fall in line with, well, Biden wants an open border because they're all going to come vote Democrat.
It's hard to say because even though Trump has made gains, he still loses that demographic.
He loses it, but the gains are very impressive considering they're all supposed to hate him.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the whole he's a racist because he wants to close the border just didn't work with the people it was actually supposed to work with. They never called George W. Bush a racist for immigration. I'm sure they called him for other reasons, but I don't know. That's just an interesting thing that going back to the motivation of who benefits from the open border.
I think it's just the proliferation of government. They want a big dependent class. And if you get folks who are coming over, they're in crisis, they need supports, well, we'll provide that support too.
All right, that's a good answer.
We should go by and say, why don't you go help the immigrants who are already here?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
'Cause we get that. Yeah, because we don't care about the born children, as we've covered on the podcast. Okay. ICE says that immigrant women in custody are still entitled to abortion services. So if you come illegally and ICE gets you, you can still
You're
get an abortion.
entitled to abortion services.
You think they're encouraged to abort?
I think they're coerced into abortion.
Okay, it's even worse.
Yeah, for sure. Because this is happening all over the country.
Right.
We're seeing people who are on the sidewalk, for example, in North Dakota, who are seeing Sudanese women being ushered into the abortion facilities. And so, they're being encouraged from someone somewhere, to when they find out they're pregnant, they, probably go to a local health department or something like that. And they're telling these women, well, we can only speculate that they're telling these women, you just got here. You just arrived here. This is not a good time for you to have a baby. So these women are going and they're aborting. And this is like boots on the ground information, that we're getting in the grassroots. So it's not just, people coming from the southern border, people even coming from African countries, who are being pushed into getting abortions because they're newly immigrated here. So it's not, like when we think about illegal immigration, obviously our mind always goes to the southern border because that's the majority of the population that's coming here. But this is worldwide. These are people coming from everywhere and they're being dispersed throughout the entire country. And so that's why we're starting to see more people throughout the country saying this is an issue. This is a real issue.
Well, and an argument that I agree with, or that's true, is we'd have an economic collapse without illegal immigration. And I don't believe in the theory that, well, some little white kid doesn't want to mow a lawn and all of that. That's kind of what some people say. But it's that they don't have to. And the labor, and throughout Latin America, we see it. And it's very sad, actually. When you go to Bogota, there's just no middle class in these countries. And it's very sad. But the labor force is the power of these of all Latin America. So when they come here, they're willing to work. They do work other people don't want to do. And there's a lot of, I think now it's bipartisan, like you're going to punish the businesses that hire the illegal, but it doesn't matter. Like why would you punish the businesses if you're not even going to remotely try to close the border? I mean, at least let these people work, right? But I would say, well, let's go over the stats, but I want to talk about California. So Texas has the second largest immigrant population of any state. In 2022, the Texas foreign-born population was 5.1 million, which is 17% of our population. 3 states house nearly half of the country's immigrants. California is number 1, 23%. Texas is 11%, and Florida. That surprises me.
Yeah, I was a little bit surprised by that too. I would have expected, like Arizona or New Mexico.
Yeah.
But
And
yeah, Florida.
I mean, I guess you could look at this and say job opportunities, agriculture, certainly California, Texas, and Florida. But that was very surprising. I have been to many vigils in California where maybe me and the leader spoke English, and they're all there illegally, super pro-life. It's good for 40 Days for Life, and they're all working, and they're all Catholic, and you're just sitting there going, basically. To your point, you come in, you're in a foreign country, you encounter this culture that's very foreign to you, and so you do what immigrants have done in our country forever, which is you build your own communities and your own people, and that's just the nature of the Poles did it, the Irish did it, the Italians did it, but it's like a whole other world. We basically have this. It's not an underground civilization, but it's this whole other world of 23% of the immigrants are in California.
Yeah.
That's amazing. 11% are in Texas, and that's why I think it's refreshing and surprising that when they do polls in New Hampshire or Virginia or Ohio or Pennsylvania, immigration is a top 2 issue. And I don't think that was the case even 4 years ago.
No. And I think this is just like, it gives us such a beautiful opportunity too. This is why I've find it so important in my role with 40 Days for Life to be able to educate people on, as the body of Christ, how we can better come together and unify in our communities to combat abortion. Because obviously this is Margaret Sanger's mission, right? Is to eliminate immigrants too. It's not just the Negro population, but she didn't, she wasn't too fond of immigrants either. So it's like we need to educate people on, what Sanger's vision was.
She didn't like black people or brown people.
Or brown people. She didn't like any people.
She liked the white man.
We didn't like exactly. And so, it's just such an opportunity for us as Christian pro-lifers to recognize that this is what we're dealing with. This is what women are dealing with, and not just women, but new immigrants, families who are coming from pro-life countries, who come here trying to make a better life for themselves. We're not going to ask them, what's your legal status, right? Like we're going to embrace you as the body of Christ. But we need them to know and understand that they're being targeted. And it's obvious, I used to work for Planned Parenthood. And so I know that, they hired people based off of whether or not they were bilingual, whether they were a minority, because it's not because suddenly they care about hiring people who are minorities or bilingual, but rather it's a tactic, and it's so that they can use us to bring more people into Planned Parenthood.
We talked with another Myra Nair. We did a magazine piece about her a number of years ago, and she talked about how when she got her job at Planned Parenthood, the questions they asked her at the interview were nothing about clinical experience or healthcare knowledge. It was all about, are you going to be able to help us with the Spanish-speaking population?
Yeah, we countered that here. Very funny, actually. The Santa Teresa, the Spanish parish here, which is beautiful. We need to take you to mass there.
All right.
It's beautiful. We will stick out, trust me. But the priest invited me, and I actually knew him because he was from Tyler and when I was growing up. So he had me speak at Santa Teresa, and I was like, I don't speak any Spanish, and he's like, no. Just do it, and then I'll translate. So I get up and I do the full thing of abortion and Planned Parenthood, and I'm trying to get them to come out to the sidewalk. And I was given the nice, we're the good guys and we're peaceful, we're prayerful, and just doing your basic recruiting thing. And then he gets up there and just is screaming in Spanish. And I don't know what he said, but whatever he said was way better than what I said. So the next Saturday when we had, it was an abortion day, 100 people came out from that parish, knelt in front of Planned Parenthood, and prayed the rosary in Spanish, sang the rosary in Spanish. It was beautiful. And I'm sitting there going, and Abby's working there, and her boss, who nameless, was there. And I'm sitting there going, yeah, they don't want this. Like this is very bad, and that's because we have to make the connection that this isn't who you are.
Right.
You love family, you love children, you love food, you love God, you love Our Lady of Guadalupe, and I think politically that's been botched. Who was the lady on the border who ran for Congress and won? She was like the first Republican in like 5 decades or something to win. I want to say her name was Myra, but we got a lot of Myras going on today. But I think it was Myra, and I just forget. But her whole thing was, we are Catholic, we believe in children, we're against abortion, and they want to abort all of us. I mean, that was basically, and she won. Mm-hmm. It resonated. She was down in McAllen, and she was great. But it's something that the culture war is always seen as like a loser, you know. But it's not when you're united in faith.
Right.
And that's, I think, you see that diversity in the pro-life movement, you know, because Latinos are pro-life and they do reject abortion. And we certainly see it with the growth of 40 Days for Life throughout Latin America, is you have these little pockets of each country where abortion is either legal or it's illegal and they just allow it and all of that. But the people are pro-life. I don't think we can't say that as Americans. Half of our country believes in abortion, and I would say 3/4 of our country believes in some form of abortion easily. So we can't say this isn't what Americans believe. It is. I think overall Americans want abortion. Latinos don't.
No, and it's really, that's why it's imperative that we educate the Latino community on this, because they come here and they think, oh, you know, America, and we're doing whatever, living our lives day to day, and they don't have a clue. I mean, I think that's part of the reason why I was clueless about Planned Parenthood myself, because abortion wasn't talked about ever in my home. Like it was when I was pregnant at 16, it wasn't even didn't even cross my mind to have an abortion. It was more something, just this propaganda talking point that I heard in the background, right, on TV. But we never talked about it because it's just not cultural. It's not part of our culture. And so I don't think we ever had to talk about it because it never affected us, or at least we didn't think it ever affected us, right? And so I think that's what happens a lot of time with people that are coming here. They don't have a clue. They don't even know that it's happening. They don't know that the impact that it's having on their community. They don't know that, 26% of abortions are happening, on Hispanic people. They don't know these things. And I think that's why we see such a huge response in the Latino community when they find out and when they're educated. So, when people are actually doing the outreach, getting out into the communities, letting them know what we're doing, our mission. That's why we see such a huge pour out of people coming to participate in the vigils. And especially in states like California, we see that. Obviously, it's very evident in states like California, where people are just coming out and they're participating, in droves.
And I think California, for us, Arizona, and along the Texas southern border, when we do we still have McAllen as a campaign?
No, because
they closed.
No abortion facility.
Closed. But they closed. But Texas, California, Arizona, anytime I do a vigil visit, it is Latinos going in for abortions and Latinos outside praying. Mm-hmm.
That's been my experience in Florida as well. I can think of our campaign in Kissimmee, Florida, and I went there and I had heard just they're going gangbusters. Everybody's out praying all the time, and I show up to the vigil and there's like nobody there. I'm like, what? Am I at the right place? Am I at the right time? What's going on here? I'm looking around. I'm starting to like get out my phone to call the leader to find out what's going on, and then all of a sudden I see around the corner a 40 Days for Life banner. And as it makes its way around the corner, there's hundreds of people behind it. They're just marching like laps as they pray around the building. There's hundreds of them. And being there that night, it sounds a little weird to say because it's still Planned Parenthood, but it was almost like a festival atmosphere. Like the priest, as you said, they said, come out and pray. And they just all came out.
Latinos,
every
right?
night. Yeah, the Latino parish came out.
Make a party out of it.
Everything's a party.
It's a cerveza. I don't know. This is a vigil.
Marchada at Planned Parenthood party.
Yeah.
But it was really a cool experience to see that it wasn't, so oftentimes we are trying to get people out there to pray and we'll take any 2 or 3 people at a time that we can get. But this was the same 200 people from the same church coming out every night and spending their night at the vigil because they were there to recognize that they're protecting their own people and protecting their community.
I want to get into the new wave feminists before we wrap up because you did a great job with this. Okay, so Destiny Herndon de la Rosa, who we know and love. So new wave feminists, they are serving these pregnant women on the border. Okay, so I want to read her quote. These women are definitely being targeted by Planned Parenthood, which is why we have to be there to offer a pro-life alternative. It's important for us as pro-lifers to understand the unimaginable and horrific conditions these women are escaping from for the chance at a better life for themselves, for their children, and for their preborn babies. But they even offer like shelter.
Yes.
They do the full deal.
Yep, shelter, which is, definitely pray for them because it worries me a lot to think about where they're at in a very dangerous city. In Mexico, on the border, well, not in Mexico, but on the Texas-Mexico border. And, obviously a lot of cartel and things like that. And so you have to think about the risks that they're taking in sheltering some of these women who are escaping trafficking, And so it's dangerous, but I believe anytime you're doing the Lord's work, God is protecting you, which obviously he has been, protecting them and helping them in their mission to serve these women, which is just incredible. So they definitely have firsthand, accounts of what they witness with these women. And obviously Planned Parenthood and the ACLU have tried to, link arms with them. And they're like, no, we don't want you here, because their idea is, let's link arms with you. You're offering this shelter to these women, but we want to offer obviously birth control and all of these other things, and push an agenda, which is obviously not helping women. They want to push birth control and abortion.
And abortion. And that's why, you mentioned a minute ago, like we have to educate because many of them are Catholic. They're culpable. Somebody offers you an abortion, you can obviously say no. But to me, this is a classic example of Planned Parenthood exploiting people who are in a very tough spot, who are escaping, misery, and saying, "You're here, you're an American now, sweetheart. You need to have an abortion." And it's a shameful thing for our country, and it's just if you imagine this scenario. Like if abortion were illegal in America, like we never had it, this would just be, these people would never come over and say, I really need to have an abortion. We're infecting them with this stuff. And Planned Parenthood's making money off of it, And that's why if the listener, the viewer could never get a chance, like go listen to Myra Rodriguez, because her story is unbelievable of coming here and running an abortion facility. And then having a conversion and I got a picture with her, and there was a couple that would go out, I think almost every day, and pray for her. And when I went out to do their kickoff in Phoenix, the couple was there, and so I got a picture with them and her because they became friends once she converted, and it's just like this beautiful, beautiful thing. So
and then it's funny too because then Planned Parenthood used her legal status against her.
Oh yeah, so no. They hired the illegal immigrant, and then when she turned on them, they said, "Well, you're illegal." It's. I forgot about that part.
Yeah,
but that's just that's the devil being the tempter and then the accuser. Tempting you and then saying, "Look at you, look at what you did." No, it's just it's absolutely despicable. We will put in the show notes. We had Myra on the podcast. And so we can put that so people can listen to Myra. Do you have any other follow-up thoughts?
Well, I think this is just something that we need to spend a lot of time talking about because there are the scope of it is so much bigger than it was even at the beginning of 40 Days for Life. We've been talking about immigration like electorally and how much more consequential it is now than even 4 years ago or 8 years ago. And same thing that we're seeing at our campaigns. And it's not just Texas and California and Florida. We're seeing it in Wisconsin and Michigan and Minnesota. And as Ramona said, some of this stuff is primarily Spanish-speaking, but you're talking about Sudanese and there's Middle Eastern culture. There's like the whole world is coming to America and the whole world is being preyed upon. So I think the witness is such a powerful thing, and that's one of the things I think that makes prayer so powerful is you can be out there and you can be holding a sign and someone might not be able to read the sign, but when you see someone out there praying or even on their knees on the concrete in the rain and the snow and the heat and the cold and the wind, they know what you're up to and it touches their hearts.
It's also important for us because, especially in America, we have all of our issues and we can compartmentalize. And for people that think that the open border doesn't impact abortion or that these issues aren't connected at all, you're just living in a fantasy world. And so I'm glad that we showed the connection because this has been a problem since 40 Days for Life, has spread to the border. I remember I was super naive on this, but early on when we had the first campaign in McAllen, and I was like, McAllen's a little town, right on the border. And I'm like, where in the world are they going to do their vigil? There's not an abortion facility there. It's this little town. And they're like, yeah, there is. It's a pretty decent-sized Planned Parenthood. And I'm like, why? And they're like, because illegal immigrants are coming over and they're aborting their babies. And I'm just like the stupid, naive, 28-year-old. And that's it's just important for us. And it gets totally lost in the immigration debate for sure.
We're talking about a festival-like atmosphere.
Oh.
I went to the...
It's your motorcycles?
Yes. I went to the campaign kickoff in McAllen in 2017. This is when we did... it wasn't the big bus tour, but we did our second bus tour, kind of a mini one. And the people of McAllen were so excited. And so they had the Spanish-speaking, Knights of Columbus motorcycle guys. And they got this big, Ford F-150 to, lead the pack. And then, in formation, 6... Knights of Columbus on motorcycles, escorting our bus through town. It should have been a 5-minute trip, but they're winding around, hit my neighborhood, hit my town, hit my neighborhood. And then we arrived, and as we pull into the parking lots, all of a sudden the lights all turn out, and everyone holds up their phone with the flashlight on, and just it feels like you're walking in an NFL stadium 5 minutes before a kickoff.
You were like Taylor Swift.
I was.
Taylor Swift.
I was Taylor Swift. It was my Eras tour. And they had a band playing, and the bishop was there, and they're T-shirts are being thrown around. It was unbelievable.
Fireworks
I've never
going
seen
off.
anything it was
That's
the closest I'll ever get to Taylor Swift or Garth Brooks. Or they lowered me down from the ceiling. No, they didn't do that, but they might as well have. It was amazing.
Oh, that's hilarious. Yeah, McAllen, that's a far drive for us. I went 2 years ago, and I made a really bad commitment because it's a long drive. So I was like, I'm going to commit that I'm going to check out random taqueras and get tacos at just random places.
You went on a taco tour.
I went on a taco tour. So it took me forever because I was like, well, I can't eat a lot at each stop. I got to get one taco, right? Which, of course, I wasn't able to pace myself.
No.
And so I was just miserably full by the time I got there. And then the next day, I'm like, I'm not doing that on the way home.
But you did it on the way
home. Made the drive go really, really well. So
after that kickoff event, somebody took us for tacos on the border there, and I had the best taco of my life. Just spectacular. And then as we left, the lady who took us said she apologized that it wasn't a very good taco.
Yeah, and you're just I live in Wisconsin. I don't know what this is.
I don't know what a good taco is, but this is great.
No, well, I'm hungry. No, I'm gonna go get something to eat. So, okay, please give us your feedback at podcast@40daysforlife.com, podcast@40daysforlife.com. Please rate, review, and share this podcast. And also, if you have not done it yet, go get your copy of What to Say When To. Thank you for all of you who have given us great feedback on the book, how it was helpful. If you have a What to Say When To story with a relative or a friend or an enemy. Knew Steve would insert himself there. The bad people are wrong. You need What to Say When To. So give us the story because we get a lot of those stories. It's really, really great. And if you have read it and you liked it or you didn't like it, go on Amazon and leave a positive review. If you didn't like it, just lie on Amazon. And if you liked it, please leave us a positive review. It helps not just our books, but all pro-life books and a lot of Christian books on Amazon. So please do that. So rate, review, share this podcast, and we will see you next time. God bless you.